you could argue that there are specific substrate utilization. You could be like, oh, well, if we're, tapping into glycogen stores here, for example, it's like we're going to do higher intensity training because it's tapping into glycogen stores, and we're going to deplete those glycogen stores. And as a result of that, we're then going to be tapping more into fat stores later in the day, especially if we are in a calorie deficit. You could make that argument. Conversely, you could also make the opposite argument where you're like, oh, well, if we do low intensity work, we're basically tapping directly into fat stores. We're doing like fat oxidation to fuel that aerobic work, right? So you can make an argument either way. And again, I think it comes back to this. It just makes sense to have both of these in the program, like why would you not get the benefits of both of these when you can very easily put both of them in the training program? Like you don't need to be fearful of doing aerobic work. You don't always need to be doing high intensity work. And also high intensity work isn't inherently better than aerobic work, like lower intensity work, unless we're talking about very, very specific things. Like I wouldn't have like an Olympic sprinter, say, for example, being like, oh yeah, you need to do more aerobic work. Like they might at certain stages, but realistically their bread and butter is going to be doing sprint specific stuff, right? Do you have anything to say on that, especially the time efficiency and the substrate utilization, Gary?
No, I agree with you. I mean, I think it is one of those things where you can go back and forth on biochemical rationale for various training programs, but ultimately we're interested in outcomes more than anything else. And when you look at the research, you look at, the anecdotes that we have through our coaching practice, I don't think you need to massively sway in favor of one type of cardio. And I think a mixed approach is generally quite nice, while also appreciating that it's not necessary to do cardio for fat loss. You can genuinely sit in your arse all day and do no exercise and have success with fat loss. You sure can. It's not the best way of going about things, but it's possible. So just recognize that, yes, it can be part of a useful approach. It's something we generally recommend. But remember, stay active throughout your day and you're already on the path. If you're just walking enough, you're getting your steps in, and that's all you have time for. You don't have time for this additional exercise. That's totally fine. Prioritize your weight training. Maybe you get in one cardio session per week. It doesn't need to be something that's, a big stressor.
100%. Now, on top of this, like you may be looking for specific fitness adaptations, right? And this might be from a sporting context. This might be from just an enjoyment context. Like you might be like, I actually want to be able to, go for a jog and be able to run for 30 minutes. Like I've had clients that are like that. They're like, I used to be able to go for a run. I'm not anymore. I'm not able to anymore. So I want to build back to that, right? So that might bias how you then structure your fat loss phase, because you have what I always call like asterisk goals, right? And like you actually have multiple goals within this. It's like you want fat loss, but you also want this other thing, right? So from that perspective, you might change the overall structure of the training program. You might be like, right, actually, we might think that we're going to have this mix of high intensity training and then this mix of low intensity training, and we're going to do a bit of a hodgepodge of everything. But in reality, if this client comes to you and they're like, right, I actually want to be able to run 5K, 10K, whatever, you might then be like, right, well, you know what, to do that, we're actually going to put, again, a little bit of cardio after the resistance training, but we're actually going to keep it lower intensity, because what we want to do here is build a little bit more endurance in your ability to run. It might actually even be before the training session. We might be like, right, we're actually just going to build up to being able to run for 10 minutes at the end of a resistance training session, right? Even a leg training session, and then on the weekend or whatever, you might be like, right, then we're also going to go for a longer run, perhaps, just to kind of really put some, time on the legs, right? And again, you might be breaking that run up. You might be like, run for 5 minutes, stop or walk for 2 minutes, 5 to whatever it is, right? Depends on the individual's fitness level, right? So that is something to also layer on top of this. It's like fitness improvements and fitness qualities, fitness goals, like they are also going to dictate the process, because oftentimes, again, when we're talking about this stuff, people look at it through the lens of, oh, we're only looking at fat loss. That's the only time we could even be thinking about cardio. when in reality, there's a lot more to cardiovascular training than just fat loss, right? And again, most people are aware of that, but it can be very much seen as purely a tool for manipulating calorie balance, right? And that isn't, in my mind at least, that isn't the most effective way to view cardio.